Hello, today we're going to be talking about a game from SPI from 1977 called BattleFleet Mars, subtitle Space Combat in the 21st Century. It's kind of interesting the colors they chose, but the art is well done. The game comes in a couple different versions. One is this kind of bookshelf version, and actually this is the designer's edition. It also comes in what they call like the flat pack version, which SPI also makes like Star Force and Outreach, or made those games. And in those cases, this game doesn't come with a tray, but it does come with a hard mounted board. And the flat tray versions have a kind of a paper or a thin cardstock board, but a tray. So I'd prefer to have the hard board. So I was happy to get this. So a little bit of the theme. The course of battle. In the years to come, space and the industrial and material benefits that exploitation of space can bring will become increasingly important to mankind. With the initiation of the space shuttle, man's first serious attempt to exploit the potential of space begins. BattleFleet Mars assumes that by the year 2093, a single corporation, the Ares Corporation, will have attained near complete control of the industries and mining operations of the inner planets and asteroids. The Ares Corporation is a monopoly, and like all monopolies, is not liked either by its employees or by the taxpayer back on Earth. Thus, when the Martian free traders raised the standard of revolt, feeling on Earth is ambiguous. So there's operations on Mars, and Mars is revolting against the Earth-based corporation. That's the premise of the game. Comes with a couple dice. My copy didn't. It's supposed to come with dice. This copy didn't come with it, but on eBay actually I was able to find these SPI dice, which would have come with the game. So the rules: 28 pages, distance measure, and it's very straightforward to use. So that's what this is for. Two of those. And this is a two-player game, but I find it's very easy to do solitaire as long as you just kind of switch your frame of reference. So it has a pad of these. They're a fleet status record, and then also a battle record, because this game is set up. Can be used as a strategic game, or a tactical game, or like a campaign game that you have the strategic, and then when you do the individual battles, you go to the tactical map. So it's got a lot of depth to it. The fleet status is for the campaign game, which I'll be focusing on the campaign game for this discussion, and the battle record is for the tactical games. Then the maps are very impressive, so they're, mounted board maps, and the tactical game, it basically is set up to map Cartesian coordinates. So one of the maps shows the XY plane. Here's a ship, so a ship would be out there. That's an XY, and it's hard mounted. Very nice. Well, that was the XZ, and then here's the XY plane. Between these two, you have XY, XZ, and then you track. You actually have two markers in tactical for the ship, so you can basically track its location in three-dimensional space. So that's for the tactical game, and then for the strategic, then two very well done boards. So strategic, you have everything you need right here as far as the charts. So all the charts for the game are here. All the information you need for the strategic game is here. And then, so that's the top part. So there's the whole strategic map all laid out. It's just very, very well done. You set up the planets and also asteroids in their orbits. And then you have ships either en route to planets or on planets. You have bases on planets. You have what are called agents, which are kind of they head to kind of political intrigue, and a lot of different kinds of ships. Various trackers up here for developing ships, refitting ships, tracking basically resource points. They call them logistics points. So there's a morale of Mars and Earth. So there's victory for one side or the other when the morale of the other decreases or the other one increases sufficiently. The battles, the political intrigue is all about getting the morale of either the Earth or Mars to the point where the war is over because the population doesn't support it. So it's interesting. So when you do the tactical game with this, you would, if you had different ships combating on a planet, you would then go to the tactical display and do all the detailed battle. But in the strategic game, if you don't do the tactical, it's based on the strengths, and you can work it out in tables, and it works really well. The game goes a lot longer if you do the tactical for each battle. So I found that just doing the strategic is gets enough flavor, and you don't have to spend all the extra time in tactical. So that's what I'm doing here. And tactical is also a standalone game. They have several scenarios where you can just do various tactics of different battles, so you don't even have to do this. You can attempt for truces, you can attempt revolts. Almost all the markers are red and blue, red for Mars and blue for Earth. So if it's basically controlled by Mars, it's red, and if it's controlled by Ares Corporation, which is Earth, it would be blue. The revolts cause it to change to red, and if you get it back under Earth control, it changes to blue. So and similar for ships, they go from red to blue based on who owns them. The exception is the agents. You have certain agents for Earth and some for Mars, and they don't flip. They're either destroyed or replaced with other agents of the same type. And then you can also do sabotage. And it shows a sequence, it shows a setup. These are the different, where you start the different units for. These are different turns, how many turns it takes to develop the various ships, or replenish them, or refit them, and then how many logistics points it costs, and this is how many logistics points you're producing. So that's an overview of the map, which is excellent. Talking about the counters here in more detail now. The game comes with 400 counters. Like I said, in this version with the mounted board, it doesn't come with a tray. The other version with a kind of a cardstock board does come with a tray, but so for this one, any craft store tray will do. This is the one I used. And there's a fair number of counters, 400. So just showing here the different types of components that are included in all those. So first of all, there's the planets. You basically have the planets and asteroids. Of course, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and then you have the large asteroids in the asteroid belt: Vesta, Pallas, Juno, Ceres. And so each of these can either be controlled by Earth or Mars. And if they're controlled by Earth, they're blue. If they're controlled by Mars, they're red. And then you have various markers that go on the board. The political markers that shows how much, at what level your political influence is. Logistics, which shows basically, resource points you have. Morale. These move up and down the board depending on the outcome of their various situations. And like I said, the level of these, when a player gets low, they're at risk of losing. When they get high, then they have a good chance of winning. So those are tracked on the strategic board as well. So if you're, times 1, times 10. So that's for the Mars player. And I want to clarify, so when I say Martian, it's basically a human that lives on Mars. It's not a green Martian. So. And then similar for Earth, political, logistics, morale. And then as far as the combat units, for each of the combat units, there's 2 counters for each one. And the reason for this is that when you do the tactical game, you have to move a counter on the X and Y plane and the X and Z plane. So since you have 2 boards there, you need 2 counters to do that 3-dimensional space. The one that at an angle is the one in the XY plane. And each ship has its own name, so that's kind of fun. And then there's different classes. This is a transport. Each of these flips over from red to blue, blue to red, depending on who owns it. There's the miners, catapults, and these are used in the strategic game. And they have different kind of resource points needed to build them, different turns, different lengths of turns that need to build them. They can be outfitted with different things, which is kind of fun. You can put, fighters and missiles on them. You fix them if they're damage. When you get to the tactical game, then you want to actually track. Like I said, there's missiles and fighters on these that you track on the ship records. You track what they have, and you mark if they're damaged, etc. In the tactical game, you actually move the missiles and fighters around on the board. So these are missiles and these are fighters, and these are bases where you would, refit and fix units. These are agents, so they move around the system. They need a ship. They have to get on one of these ships to move to different asteroids or planets. But when they're on a asteroid or planet, they exhibit political influence, and the higher the number, the more political influence they have, and they basically can add that number to different roles for politics. They turn out to be very important. And so it turns out the Earthlings, the Ares Corporation, has more individual of the agents, but they have less kind of power per each. These are task force markers, which basically a task force would comprise of several of these ships, and then you would put them. I would just put them in an open section of the board, and then you use this task force to move it around the planets. This is one example though where they don't switch between, because they're either Martian or Earthling. And these are used in a tactical game. So this is a velocity indicator, and then this is used in strategic game. This is a neutralization marker, which indicates if various combat units are neutralized. So this is the initial setup. So this is what it looks like right before the rebellion starts. So first of all, set up the planets to show where they are in the solar system. Jupiter, the different asteroids, Mars, Earth, Venus, Mercury, of course. So that's the starting point of the track, and then each turn they'll step one along. And this is actually shows the relative rotation of the planets around the sun, which is kind of neat. Up here in the solar display, logistics points. Martians start with 0. Ares Corporation starts with 4. As far as the morale, Martians start with 77. Earth starts with 55. Mars has 7 political points, and Earth has 5. There's bases in some of the worlds, so there's one base on Jupiter, Ceres, Pallas, Juno, and Vesta. There's 2 bases on Mars, and 6 on Earth. And all of the units right now are under Earth control, and when the rebellion starts, then we'll see how some of those flip over to Mars, like right at the beginning of the game, but that'll be the next step. Earth has 6 catapults, 2 transports. Mars has 4 catapults, 2 miners, and 1 transport. Vesta has 2 catapults, 3 miners, 1 transport. Juno has 2 catapults, 3 miners, 0 transports. Ceres, 3 catapults, 5 miners, 2 transports. Pallas has 2 catapults, 2 miners, 0 transports. Jupiter, 3 catapults, 0 miners, 1 transport. There are 2 catapults, 5 miners, and 3 transports in transit, and it leaves up to the player to set that up. And I basically have a couple miners going to Earth from Jupiter, some catapults going to Mars from Jupiter, and these 2 I have a miner and some miners transport coming to Mars from Earth, and a miner and transport going to Earth from Mars. So that's the units, and then the agents, it allows you set up all the agents, and it allows you to put them wherever you want. It's 2-player, agents will go where they want. First the Ares puts it down, and then the Mars does. Obviously I'm doing 1-player. So I set up a Earth agent on each place, and I put an extra one and a little more powerful one on Mars and an extra one on Earth. For the Mars player, I put the most powerful one on Mars, the second most powerful one on Earth, and then I put one on Jupiter and Ceres, since that seems to be a significant asteroid. So that's the setup. The first step in play is to capture the incidents of the New Year's Day revolt of 2094. So in that revolt, the Free Traders led a rebellion, talks about there, and from that, then we determine, based on the revolt table and what's going on with the politics, which planets and which ships go to the rebellion side. So if we do the revolt table, roll a d6, apply political points, and then consult the revolt table for each of the planets. I've done it for each of the planets except for Vesta. I'll show that as an example. Let's do that. So for Vesta, like I said, you can apply political point. Consult the table, Vesta. So basically, if I roll a 1, R means it goes to the rebellion side. L means it stays loyal to Earth, the Ares Corporation. And the second one is how many ships go to the rebellion. So, and then I'm going to apply. I have a corporation agent there with 1 point. For these tables, the number of points you apply for the Ares Corporation increases your die roll, and the number of agents you apply for the rebellion decreases your die roll in these charts. I'll basically add 1 to my die roll on the revolt table. 4. That'd be 5. Vesta, it remains loyal, and 3 ships go to the rebellion, which is either the good side or dark side, depending on your opinion. And then the Martian player gets to decide which of these ships go to his side. And for my purposes, I'm just going to take all minor ships because they already have lasers, so I'm going to take those. So these 3 will go to the rebellion. I'll flip them over to indicate that. But the base and the planet stay blue. And now also I want to show here, on several of the ones I've done already, there's a lot of ships involved, so I've used the task force markers, which are like, for instance, D here. This is a Martian task force marker, so that's the task force, and then these are the elements within that. That works out pretty well because you use the corresponding markers to indicate the fleet marker, and you can put it anywhere on the board, but for me, I think they had the duplicate numbers to use on the tactical display, but it works really well on the solar display for the strategic game because that way you can just map them directly. And then so I'm going to also set up a fleet marker for Vestodon, and then all the ones in transit, from my interpretation, stay with the Earth side, and the ones in production stay with the Earth side. So then we'll get into a regular turn play. And what's neat about this setup is it allows randomization of your initial situation, so there's a lot of replayability of the game. So I'm a few turns in here, and thought I'd talk about where the game's going and what I'm seeing. The turn sequence is ship movement, ship transit allocation, combat, political interaction, and that includes during your morale checks, logistics and maintenance, planetary movement, and game turn indication phase. Kind of where I'm at right now, I've been moving the planets, been moving ships around. These are the fleets I have. So right now, Earth is got Earth fortified because we don't want any problems there. Mars has a pretty big fleet. The Martians have a pretty big fleet at Mars because there's the fleet marker E, and you see they just have Earth just has a couple ships there that have been knocking down. Earth does have some agents there, and Mars also has agents, so they're doing some political work. There's more units coming in from Earth because they're going to see what they can do at Mars and try to disrupt that. But then Mars also has reinforcements coming in. Earth looks pretty solid and for Ares. Mars looks pretty solid for the Martian effort. Vesta is solidly Earth, not doing anything there. There's conflicts going on, military conflicts going on Ceres, Pallas, and Juno. It's pretty close both in Juno and Pallas. Just a couple of ships there. Mars has the upper hand in Ceres. So right now, as far as logistics points, so when it starts out, Mars doesn't have any capability like production, but they develop that over time. So there's a maximum production capacity, logistics point capacity Earth and Mars can have. The maximum Ares capacity is 12, and then the Martians ramp up in game turns 1 to 5. They have 2, and then when you get 6 to 10, they can have 3, all the way up to game turn 24. You can have 7. That's the maximum, but the actual amount is dictated by how many asteroids they have. Earth, they just get all their stuff from the asteroids, so they need asteroids. Mars, they inherently have 2 production just by having Mars. Earth, if they get 3 points for each asteroid they have, and currently they have 2 asteroids, so that would be 6 logistics points. Now Mars, they get 2 for having Mars, but then, and they also get 3 for the asteroids they have, but in order to also get their asteroid credit, they need to have a catapult on both Jupiter and Mars, and that's because basically they're using the hydrogen from Jupiter for their production fuel, so they need the catapult from there. So that's interesting satellite. That's why Jupiter's important for Mars. But since they have one there in Fleet A, they do have a catapult. When their max limit allows them, they can capture 3 from Ceres and 3 from Juno. But right now they're just limited to 2 because of the early turns. I'm on about turn 4. And the planets have been moving, ships have been moving. There's been some combat. The agents have been using their political influence to affect the die rolls of combat. And so let me walk through a turn here and you'll get a sense of how it goes. So ship movement. So I'm going to keep Jupiter's important, so I'm just going to keep the Martian fleet there. I'm going to withdraw. I'm going to withdraw this ship from Ceres because you can withdraw, and he's not going to gain anything there. So to figure out where he's going to go and how this works then is he's going to go back. He's going to go to Vesta. Ceres to Vesta. So this is how this thing works. So you go from your origin planet, and then you go to where it will be in the turn it gets there. And it'll be like 2 turns before it gets there, I believe. And if not, I'll adjust it. So 2 turns would be there. And actually I was wrong. It'll take 3 turns because 3 turns is out here on this scale. It'll be 3 turns. So since it's going from Ceres to Vesta, then you put it in the Vesta transit track 3 turns out. So then each turn you move it up towards that. So that's how the movement works. I'll keep the ships the same here, although these are coming in now. So I'm gonna have a lot of forces coming into Pallas. Whole task force coming in there that will be doing combat there. It's kind of close here, so I'll keep that there. I'll keep Mars as it is, but I can move these up. So I have a task force coming here, and then another one here, and then this fleet goes in here because you advance them up the transit tracks. I'll do one battle now just to show how it goes, and then offline I'll do the others, and we'll move on to the next step. Let's look at Mars here. We'll do this Mars combat. You define who the attacker and defender is, and the defender is always the player that owns the planet, and of course the Martians own Mars at this point, although that could change in the future, but that's how it is right now. The attacker, the Earthling, I mean, this is a pretty lopsided battle, but we'll see how it goes. The idea is that the Earthling just wants to see how much damage they can do to see if they can take down some of the Martian forces. Each type of unit has a strength point. The transport has 3. Now, if it's damaged, it would lose a strength point. None of these have been damaged, though, but for instance, if it had 1 hit, then it would be a 2 strength point. And we track this for each of these units to see what their strength is. Catapults, they can only have attacking power if they've been retrofitted with lasers, and unfortunately none of these have yet. But they do allow defensive. The attacking attack strength then is, for transports, it's 3 and 3, so 6 attack strength, and these don't count. Miners have 2, so for defense you do count it for catapults. So 4, 8, 12, 16, and then 2 for the miners, 18, 20, 22. So it is 6 versus 22. And then you go up to the tactical abstract combat results table, and you use that percentage. So, one other thing to note is there are bases on Mars, and each base has a defense of 6, and you can only count 2 of them in battle, so that's another 12. That would be 6 versus 34. Again, it's not looking super optimistic for the overly ambitious Earthlings. 6 over 34 is about 20%. So you go to the table of 10 to 20% here, and this tells you the result. You roll a 6-sided dice, and the first number is the percent of attackers that are lost, and the second number is the percent of defenders that are lost. 50% of attackers are lost, and 5% of defenders are lost. I mean, you could do the percentages, but it recommends you use this table. So this shows that given the strength, it says how much you lose. The attackers lost 50%, and there was a strength of 6. So as expected, they lost 3 strength points. And then you tabulate that on the sheet, track the damage on the sheet, and the person that receives damage then can decide which ship it applies to. He'll apply it, 1 catapult will take the damage, and so he'll do it to 123. He'll take 3 damage. And when a unit is damaged more than 50% like this one, then it's major damage and it can't be involved in offensive combat. It'll have to go back to a starbase to get fixed. What's interesting about that is, even though these didn't participate in combat, they were able to sustain some of the damage so that the other ones weren't, so that's interesting. Actually, one other thing I'd like to add here. Okay, so we rolled that, and it was 55, but let's say that the agents applied their political influence, and each point of political influence can moves the die beneficial for the Martian if the Martian does it, or beneficial for the Earthling if the Earthling does it. And they're going to use all their political points. So the Martian has 4, the Earthling has 3. So the net is 1 positive for the Martian if you combine 4 minus 3. When we rolled the 3, it turns out that if we move it, beneficial to the Martian would be more damage to the Earthling, who is the attacker, so I'd move it up, but it turns out to be the same. It's still 55. So that, in that case, it didn't affect it, but how that works is you shift up and you improve your die roll. 5% then of the defending units, I believe the total is 34. 5% would be 2. It's interesting that, and actually with 2 damage, that can just, it basically eliminates a miner, so I'll take that off. It's interesting that, so even this at a higher percentage, these kind of inactive units were able to sustain that damage. And here, you have the benefit of bases. 5% of a bigger number is a bigger absolute number than if it were a smaller strength value. So you have an effect there. So it's interesting how that plays out. But that's how combat works. So we've done the combat phase. We've done movement, transit, allocation, combat, and now we're doing the political interaction phase. And also part of this phase now, we roll the morale chart. The Martian, they're in the category of 7 here, since they have basically 75 points. So let's see what happens. 4, the Earth morale goes down by 1. And we'll do this simultaneously and play them after. So the Earth one will go down by 1, and now simultaneously we'll do the Earth one. They're in the category of 5, so let's roll. 5. So there's a Ares assassination attempt. So the Ares player gets to do an assassination attempt. And now they refer, this is the assassination table. This is the die roll. So the attempt is going to be made on Mars because the Martian's most powerful agent is there. Turns out we'll adjust the die rolls. The Mars player is going to apply his 4 political points, and the Ares player will apply his 2. So the net is 2 positive for the Mars player. So he can he'll reduce the number of the die roll 2 points, or a value of 2, based on what the Ares player rolls. 5. Based on the political point applied difference here, it gets down to 3. The attempt fails. After that, then we do maintenance. We decide, if it would have been a win or loss for the Ares player then, in this category the game would be over, but we didn't end up with a Martian or Ares victory since our morale points are still pretty high. So we'll do the logistics phase now, because we did political phase. Now we'll do logistics. First of all, for the Mars player, they get 2 logistics points just for having Mars. That's the maximum they can have until turn 6. Then after turn 6, they can start getting resources from the asteroids. They'll move up 2, and then they'll decide to develop a miner, which costs 3, and it also takes 3 turns to develop. So we'll put that in the production track, and then knock them down to 1, given they spent 3. The Ares Corporation's got a little more options. First of all, they'll advance the ones they have in production. They have a catapult that moves up, and they have a catapult and some miners that moved up. So when it moves to 0, the developed ship goes to Earth, because that's where the base is. But new ships go to Earth, and for Mars, new ships go to Mars. And then they see what points they have, and they get their resources from the asteroids. So they have 2 asteroids, Pallas and Vesta. So they get 3 for each, so they get 6. They had 12, so they went to 18. They would want to buy some more stuff. Say if they buy 2 miners and a transport, that would be, so it'd be 6 total for the miners and 4 total for the transport. That'd be 10, and they're up to 18, so that'll move them back down to 8. So they have 8 logistics points, and their miner is being developed 3 turns out, and also their transport is developed 3 turns out. And you put those on the developmental part. All the logistics. And now, after logistics maintenance, now you do planetary movement game. So a neat aspect of this game then is, so now we're moving the planetary in turn track. The planets move, a reasonable representation of accuracy to what reality is. So how big of an arc they sweep. These are the relative distances are pretty accurate. If you look carefully, you'll see even they're not completely concentric to capture kind of like a little bit of elliptical behavior though. We'll move Jupiter 1, then you move all the asteroids, progress them. Move the planets. So now you have different positions, and this will affect when you move the ships the next time. And for turn marker, there's a lot of ways you can do it, but since you just have increasing numbers here, I just do a turn number on any of these tracks. I just use something from the tactical game. And that's the end of a turn. That's BattleFleet Mars from SPI from 1977. It's an excellent game. It's easier to say what's good about it than what's bad about it. I really can't find any downside. You know, the map is great. It's accurate. It gives you actually learn about how the solar system works. The counters are simple but nice. Actually, for what they're doing, I like how they're made. Actually, they're kind of pastel instead of glossy. I like that. And actually, another neat thing is all the information is on the board, which may seem like a small thing, but I think it's pretty neat that you have everything you need right here. You have combat, you gotta do strategic thinking, you gotta think, take kind of physics into effect. You have enough different types of ships to make it interesting. You can upgrade ships with missiles and fighters, and you get various levels of damage. You can easily track it on the sheet, and it's got an easy way to track it for each of the individual sheets. You have political intrigue by the agents and what they do to the politics, and then the end result being you're not trying to totally destroy any planet. You're trying to have the population be behind you, because if they're not, it's not gonna work out. So and in addition to all that, you have production. You can refit ships. You capture logistics. You have to plan. Where are you going to get your resources? How are you going to expend them? How are you going to move between planets? Where's the focus? There's a lot of strategy involved. And even with the fleets, you can just put them on the board and have markers, and it's all right here. It's a great game. Highly recommended.